Titans, go!
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. I'm your host, Charles Skaggs, back in Titans Tower, at least the basement of Titans Tower, which could definitely do with some redecorating, in my opinion. Ready to talk some more Titans Season 2. Unfortunately, my normal co-host, Jesse Jackson, decided to be a bit of a slacker this weekend, and so he's off having a little mini vacation with his wife, Linda. So, hi, Jesse, if you're listening. And but thankfully, coming to our rescue here in Titan Talk is one of our favorite people. You've heard him before if you listen to our Titans Season 1 review and our Doom Patrol Season 1 review. Welcome back to Titan Talk, DJ Nik. Hi, Nik. How are you doing?
Hey, Charles. I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me on. I'm really honored to actually be, replacing such a huge part of your Titan Talk like Jesse Jackson. So, I'm kind of feeling like the rookie stepping off the bench and getting on the ice to replace the star here.
Well, it takes both of us just to replace Jesse. So, but for those who don't know, Nik is the wonderful host of the Whiskey and Cigarettes show and radio show, and where he talks about country music, but he's also the host of the Happiness in Darkness podcast that yours truly was on not too long ago on his first episode talking Superman the movie, when we had a lot of fun doing that, and I'll be making a return appearance sometime soon. So I'll just tease that there.
Yeah, your people still have to talk to my people, so we'll see what we figure out.
Yeah, I'll have my people call your people. We'll work it out. As soon as I get some people, I'll have them call you. Call your
Sounds
people.
good.
All right. So here at episode 42, the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, if you're a Douglas Adams fan like I am, we're going to talk Connor, the rather uninterestingly named title episode for the first appearance of the Connor Kent Superboy on Titans, played, of course, by Joshua Orpin, who I thought did an amazing job as Connor Kent. And this was the 6th episode of Season 2. Just came out yesterday on October 1st, 2019. Written by Richard Hatem, who wrote the episodes Rose, here in Titan Season 2, and he also wrote the Season 1 finale, Dick Grayson, and he wrote a few other episodes, including the episode Donna Troy, my favorite episode of Titan Season 1. And the story was directed by Alex Kalimnios, who directed the Season 1 episode Asylum. That was the episode where, of course, Dick Grayson burns his Robin costume at the end of the episode. And before we get into our guest cast, I want to ask Nik. Nik, I'm guessing you've been watching Titan Season 2 pretty regularly, hopefully. And,
yes.
and I'm dying to know what you've been thinking of the season so far, since we haven't had a chance to talk to you about that yet.
Well, I know that there was a lot of backlash when it came to Season 1. A lot of people were not particularly happy about it. I personally am maybe one of the few people who was really satisfied with it.
Right.
But I will add to that they have definitely kicked it up a notch. It's definitely become even more cohesive story-wise. The characters are brilliant. Aside from, of course, the titles being a little bit banal and a little bit boring, the names, it's don't judge a book by its cover, I guess, in this case, because the content is superb. the episode's titles could be do with a little bit of retweaking, but other than that, so far I'm really enjoying the ride.
Yeah. So you would give this, you would think you're enjoying Titan season 2 more than you were season 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yes, I think they definitely stepped up the game. Already they had me roped in for season 1, but season 2 is even better. And I think it's hard sometimes, with anything, be it an album, a music album, for example, you have a great debut. It's even number 2 is usually the harder one to do.
Yeah,
because
that sophomore album is always a little harder for some people. But Titans seems to be the exception to the rule on that. I think, Jesse and I have talked that we are loving season 2, especially because just the overall tone seems to be a lot more of what we wanted from season 1. And I don't know if you share that opinion. I know you love season 1, so you were happy with it. You were very content. But Jesse and I think we were looking for something a little more, and at least a little not so doom and gloom. And this is a much more upbeat tone to the season, I think. And we're getting the introduction of a lot of great characters this season. Connor Kent, of course, being one of those.
And I think it was interesting how so far they've also handled certain characters. There's almost a Game of Thrones quality to it, as it were, because you're introduced to a character, boom, he dies. You're introduced to another one, boom, he's dead. So it's an interesting take in that sense. And I agree with you when you say about the it's not as dark. I think they've maintained a gritty level, but they haven't brought it to like a Watchmen kind of tone, where it's really everything's so depressing and there's never a happy moment. It's kind of like those soap operas, if you think about it, where people are enjoying 5 seconds of happiness and then boom, you get news that something's happened. It's like, when are these people ever happy? It's like, give these people a break.
Yeah, I would say that Titan season 1 seemed to be more directed by Zack Snyder, and Titan season 2. What would be a good comparison? Maybe who would you?
I wouldn't say Joss Whedon, but a little bit Joss Whedon-ish, I think.
Okay,
it has some of the lightheartedness, maybe, of Joss Whedon.
Maybe the Russo brothers.
There you go. Yeah, I think the Russo brothers is an even better fit because it is gritty, but it's not super depressing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the way to go on this one. Guest cast, of course. This week we get, like I said, Joshua Orpin, introduced as Superboy / Connor Kent, though he's not quite Superboy yet. Genevieve Angelson, who is an actress I'm not familiar with, but I thought she did an amazing job as Dr. Eve Watson, the geneticist who goes through the gamut of emotions this story. And Sarah Deakins got a cameo as Martha Kent, so I was very happy to get a little tease of Martha Kent in this story. Natalie Gumede, I want to say Gumede, as Mercy Graves, who, of course, is Lex Luthor's number 1 henchman, henchwoman, henchperson, take your pick. Essentially here as his security specialist, as she's introduced, who oversees things for him. She's more the field operative for him, and but she's always in constant contact with Lex. We actually see her calling Lex, so there was a very nice direct connection almost to Lex Luthor in the story. Rahul Beneha, I believe, is Walter Hahn, I want to say Dr. Eve Watson's kind of supervisor at Cadmus Labs. And Peter MacNeill played Lionel Luthor, only this version is a lot different from Smallville's Lionel Luthor, primarily because this Lionel is much older, is pretty much blind, as we kind of see him with a very noticeable cataract in one eye, and a much more bitter, darker take on Lex Luthor than we've seen on Smallville before. So before we get started with our main topics, were you at all? I'm not sure with your. I know you have a great comic book background, but does your comic book expertise go into the realm of Superboy at all? or how much does it go into Superman?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Superman. I've read pretty much classic Superman from the origins all the way up to today. And so therefore, I was introduced to Superboy, I guess, like most people were during the death of Superman, or shall we say the post-death of Superman event,
Right.
where we find out that he is a clone of Superman. And it was interesting what I thought about this particular version of Superboy. They decided to go the Titans route, where he is a clone of Luthor and Superman, because obviously the original, he's just a clone of Superman. But this case, they wanted to go the route of Superman and Lex Luthor. I really enjoyed this particular portrayal, and it reminded me a little bit, I don't know if you are familiar with Young Justice.
Yes, I am. Yes, we've actually talked about that here in the podcast.
And Young Justice, and I had a Young Justice vibe as when it came to the debut of Connor Kent, because just the origins are very similar, if you will. I mean, because I still, that episode is still ingrained in my mind of his escape from Cadmus.
Right.
Obviously, it's a little bit different, but there are a lot of similarities. And so I have a feeling they might have taken something from Young Justice because it was so successful. But yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed it. And I thought it was interesting they decided to really focus on the fact that he has a very infantile brain and he behaves like a child, as in that everything's so new to him and he's very instinctive when it comes to his reactions.
Right.
He's very childlike, and props to the actor for being able to pull that off, because it's often not easy to do that, because sometimes you might have people who portray, should we say, an emotionally stunted, or should we say almost regressed adult, and it doesn't come across as being real, shall we say, or you think this person is maybe suffering from unfortunate mental illness or something of that nature, whereas here you could actually feel like it was a child in an older man's body, kind of like Big, if you will.
Yes, or maybe Shazam.
Oh, Shazam, exactly.
Yeah. That very much, this rather adult body, but yes, that the mentally, or at least emotionally, Connor is very emotionally stunted. He's not mature enough yet, because, hey, he just came out of a lab. He doesn't have that life experience, and we find out through the course of the episode, and that he has these memories left over from Superman, and he has memories left over from Lex Luthor. And obviously this was a concept, like you talked about, from the Teen Titans issues that were written by Jeff Johns back in the 90s, or I want to say maybe early 2000s, that that kind of Johns introduced that concept that it wasn't just Connor being a clone of Superman. He was like a 50% clone of Superman and a 50% clone of a human to stabilize his Kryptonian DNA. And of course, Lex Luthor being behind the project at Cadmus Labs, well, hey, of course, he's going to be the donor. And Connor, of course, is the result. Now Titans, the TV series, kind of takes that a little further by introducing the concept that Connor is both good, like Superman, but also evil, like Lex Luthor. And because he has these conflicting memories, his morality is sometimes at conflict. And obviously that kind of that makes him a little more unpredictable, especially given his lack of emotional maturity, and leads to obviously some problems throughout the episode. Yeah. So first and foremost, what was your take on Joshua Orpin as Superboy? What did you think of his performance?
To be honest, I had not seen him in anything else. I mean, I don't know if to be honest, I'm not sure if he has been in anything else, because he seems a relatively young actor.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure he's been in other stuff, but it's nice sometimes to be introduced to actors that you've never seen before, so you go in fresh and you don't have a certain character they portrayed in mind, because you're like, okay, I remember him as doing this. Why is he doing that? And you maybe expect something from an actor that you know from previous roles. I really enjoyed him. Like I said, I think he really played the part really well. The emotion, the constant swaying of emotions from wide-eyed and surprised to furious to apologetic. It was just done so well, and he sold it wholly and completely, and almost this relationship, mother-son relationship he has with Eve at first, because suddenly he begins to trust her, and he even asks her at some point, can I call you mom? It's very endearing. I thought it was endearing. Some people might have thought it was creepy, but I thought it was kind of endearing.
Well, I mean, Connor's approaching it very innocently, and Eve is going, no, let's not go there at all, no, which I thought was kind of funny. Because we don't, as we find out through the story, as Eve kind of peels back these layers, and we get, down to the actual truth of her involvement in Connor's creation. She's taught. Mercy makes this comment that Eve is pretty much devoted 1,000% to this project, to the exclusion of any kind of social life, romantic life. She doesn't have any kids. She doesn't even have a dog, which maybe explains why Crypto's around in Cadmus Labs. But she's isolated herself, and just apparently it's been for years that she's poured into this project to the exclusion of all else. And so then when Connor comes around and asks her, well, hey, can I call you mom? I'm sure that definitely threw her for a loop, big time.
It's true, and the fact about not having a social life, I was a little bit confused to a certain extent, because when she first is called to the labs, when Connor breaks out, she's wearing an attractive evening dress, and and apparently she smells of alcohol or what have you. And perfume. So I'm thinking to myself, it might have been one of the few times this poor girl was actually able to maybe go on a date,
right,
or something of that nature. And maybe one of the few times it gets totally dashed to pieces because there has to be a catastrophe on maybe your first day off in centuries. And it's like, it all goes, horribly wrong. So maybe there was an attempt, or there is an attempt of hers of trying to have a social life, but it almost seems to not be able to happen for her.
Right. Or at the very least, she attempted to have that social life, but ends up, because of that, she ends up getting in trouble with Walter, who, as we find out, was trying to contact her all night. And we gather that she's out partying, but given her personality, and we see her drinking brandy later in the truck with Connor, was she actually out having fun, or was she just dressed up to go out, but really just sitting in a bar somewhere getting hammered?
That you opened a huge can of worms there, because now I have a mental picture of Eve sitting alone in this kind of dingy bar, kind of pour me another one kind of situation, trying to look classy, even though she's I don't know, at the Titans version of Moe's, for example, and just sort of drinking her sorrows away.
Probably fending off all these guys trying to hit on her because she's dressed, in a party dress. But I kind of see her as just that she maybe intended to go out, changed her mind, ended up going to a hotel bar or something, and just wanted to be alone, drinking.
Yeah, well, maybe she just cares about her appearance outside of the office, and just wants to, look good, because she values herself, and so she didn't want to, I don't know, go in, sweats or what have you. But so it's an interesting character, and you know what? It made me really want to know more about her past. Often, because I'm a huge fan of origin stories, and if there are obscure characters that I might not know much about, I really want the series to tell me something more about this person. Sometimes maybe it's nice to be left in the dark, but to be honest, Charles, I'm really curious to know more about her, and maybe see a couple of flashbacks even when she was actually starting on the project. Because when we hear about how enthusiastic she was and how much she wanted to do this, I mean, she says, of course, she wanted to do it to see if it worked. but it'd be interesting to see, how she got picked up by Cadmus and all this kind of thing. So she's a very interesting character, and I hope she'll be with us for a while.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the last of her, especially given the fact that Crypto ends up being captured and Connor was shot. So I don't think we've seen the last of her at all. Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying he's definitely hoping.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Richard Haddam, the writers, really spent a lot of time developing her as a character. So I got to think she's not just going to let this go. And I don't think we've seen the last of her, personally. Mm-hmm. Now, there is this one really powerful moment toward the end of the episode. After Connor, Eve, and Crypto, we need to talk about Crypto in a minute, but they're kind of they hit the road after this failed attempt where Connor, who ends up in Smallville, Kansas, at Lionel Luthor's house, Mercy and her team end up tracking them down, and Eve is brought along as kind of like an expert to be overseeing everything. So she's stuck in a van, and the team attacks. Everything goes predictably helter-skelter, and then Eve, when actually confronted by Superboy, she basically decides, okay, F Cadmus. I'm not going to do this anymore. We're going to let's get out of here. And so they hit the road, and they end up eventually, they stop off at a little diner restaurant, and Connor, gets into it with he wants to stop this one guy from who's abusing his girlfriend and dragging her into a car to her protests. And then Eve gets a little frustrated because of Connor. She feels isn't mature enough to understand why he needs to lie low. And so she takes him to San Francisco, which of course is going to lead to his connection with the Titans. And they end up going to this abandoned facility that turns out to be an old Cadmus lab, where essentially this is where Connor was born. So what did you think of that scene before we get into the details?
Well, I was actually happy that they did it, because too often we have TV shows or movies where the character ends up befriending somebody who knows about their past and doesn't tell them anything for ages and ages and ages, and they might just disappear or something. Then the character goes in and finds out, gets terribly traumatized. He turns on this person, the whole liar revealed kind of thing.
Right.
And I'm so glad they did not use that trope. They're like, okay, we're going to get this out of the way immediately. She's going to be the better person and say, okay, fine, I'll take you to show you where you were made, as it were, where you were born. And I really appreciated that. Granted, it doesn't stop Connor from getting seriously irked at her. But aside from that, I appreciated the fact that they did not use that typical trope of you're not going to find out your origins until way later on, and it's going to blow up in your face, and you're going to lose trust in people, etc. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, obviously, if this show had been on the CW, they would have dragged this out over the course of at least 2 seasons, probably. Yeah. But here with Titans, it's a much more the reactions are much more mature and adult. So when Eve brings him to this facility, and they go inside, and obviously it's all kinds of creepy, because everything's been abandoned, and Connor sees this reference to a Project Rakshasa, which Rakshasa is a Hindu word that's referenced to like a human being in Hindu mythology filled with bloodlust. Also, basically, essentially, they're referred to as man-eaters. Now, whether we're going to get any payoff for that later on, who knows? But it doesn't exactly strike a heartwarming tone, to say the least. And they kind of get into this moral debate about, in which they kind of started in the car on the way there, about the ethical value of science experiments. And Eve, this is where she kind of lays all her cards on the table and goes, look, remember when I told you that there are no bad science experiments? Well, guess what? I was lying. I admit that. Sorry. And she says that, Lex wanted to clone Superman, but he couldn't figure out how. And she was the one who gave him the idea to stabilize the Kryptonian genes with human ones. And so she gave him the idea to use his DNA on Connor, to create Connor. And Connor's unsure, like, well, does that make me bad? And she tries, does that make me a monster? And she kind of takes him back to, she says, okay, well, here's a big vault door. All your answers are behind this big vault door. And you're about the only one who can actually get in there to find out. So it's up to you, but be careful what you wish for. Mm. And so Connor rips open the door. He goes inside. He sees all these mutated prototypes, previous versions. As we find out in the episode, he's Subject 13, but we kind of see the earlier versions, like Subject 8, Subject 9. And Connor even comes across one version where it looks pretty much like himself, only horribly mutated because something didn't go quite right. And then he comes out and he realizes, okay, I guess I've met Lex Luthor now, because Lex has to be the most horrible human being on the planet to make that happen. And he kind of wonders, well, am I a monster? And Eve tries to reassure him that no, you're not a monster. You're people just like me, and you can be you. It's up to you to decide to be better. So, what did you think of that moral dilemma that Connor struggled with, and Eve tried to guide him through and teach him about?
Well, see, I mean, this kind of goes back to the fact of him saying, can I call you mom? Because she acts incredibly parental when it comes to him.
Right.
From the parking lot when she yells at him like you'd see a mother yell at a child saying, get back here, and all this kind of thing. It's like, I think she almost had to check herself when she did that, because she was kind of like, oh my God, I'm turning into his mother. And then after that.
Or was she doing that because she felt she had to, that she was playing a role?
Maybe it was what he would respond to, because she thought about herself. Yeah. I'm talking to a man-child, literally.
So I have to treat him like a parent. Yeah.
So it could very well be. You make a good point when you say that. And no, the moral dilemma, it really did feel like a child who comes to terms with the concepts of good and evil for the first time. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? How do I become a better person, knowing who my parents are? Which way do I go, and which way do I swing? And it was handled so well. Just the crisis he has, his internal crisis.
It's like an existential crisis, really, of morality.
Yeah, because he just seems to crumple, just fall to pieces, where it's like, what am I supposed to do? How do I be a better person? And it really does seem, as I was saying, like a child trying to ask somebody older than him, or maybe he was looking for either a parent or a mentor, as it were. How do I do something better? And I really appreciate that. And it really reinforces the chemistry between Eve and Connor, and how well these two work together. And it's just so beautiful, and the synergy is just incredible. My hat goes off to the casting department for casting these two, because they just work so well together. And also what I will appreciate is, from the trip from Kansas to San Francisco, let's be honest, it's a long trip. My knowledge of the U.S. geography is sketchy at best, but I do know that Kansas is way over one side and San Francisco is way over the other. However,
it's like traveling half the country.
Exactly.
From Kansas to California. Yes.
But however, I think they gave us the impression that it might have taken a while, and then maybe they got to know each other a little bit. Granted, they could have maybe given us a few scenes of them road tripping, maybe Just a little bit, maybe, I don't know, stopping someplace or just chatting a little bit, but it might have slowed the momentum of the show, of the episode down.
Yeah.
But I think they gave us the impression it wasn't like, oh, we just teleported from Kansas to San Francisco in a split second. So I also appreciated that, because sometimes I think people miss those things where it's like, okay, you were in Kansas, now you're in San Francisco. How did you do that by car? You didn't fly. I'm like, but they addressed it well.
Yeah, it's like, were you driving 90 miles an hour to get there? How'd you get there so fast?
Exactly.
But yeah, as a philosophy buff, I was just really into the whole debate, the moral debate of, and it's what good science fiction does. And this is a really good science fiction episode because, it deals with like the philosophy of cloning, and when with the clone, where the clone has to decide, well, do I want to be good or do I want to be evil? And Eve, as the scientist who created the clone or helped create the clone, she's guiding him through this, and she's essentially being the one, like, if you or I had to suddenly hang out with a 3-year-old, and oh, by the way, I've got to teach this 3-year-old, okay, how do I teach him about the concepts of good and evil? How would you go about doing that? And so, that would be, needless to say, a little bit awkward, to say the least. But
Of course.
it's great acting, great writing, and Eve, there's moments where she's talking and you're not sure, well, do I like her? Am I supposed to not like her? And ultimately, though, she tries to help Connor escape. She ultimately decides, okay, I'm going to stay behind. You go off with Crypto. You escape, and I'll try to buy you some time. So so here's the scientist who has been all about Connor as an experiment, caring enough about him as a person to want to see him survive, because she knows what Cadmus Labs will do to him if they get their hands on him again. And so she self-sacrifices for him.
It definitely shows that she has a moral compass,
right?
Because of the fact that first you could say, okay, maybe she's a cold scientist, and she could, because in the wrong hands, of course, you find yourself with somebody with Connor's potential,
right,
who could totally tell him, no, Superman's the bad guy. You have to go out and, do this, and this, break into a bank or do whatever. But she's got a moral compass. It kind of reminded me, and I'm going to use a very, very crazy reference here, to a 90s Flash episode.
Okay. This is totally in my wheelhouse, by the way.
I thought as much.
Because The Flash is my jam, and I'm a huge fan of the 90s Flash TV series with John Wesley Shipp. So go for it.
Oh, you and me both. That was one of the few shows that me and my sister actually agreed upon when we were kids, and we actually did not have to fight over the remote for. So that goes to tell you a lot.
Nice.
But yeah, there's this one episode which I'm sure you remember where they actually clone the Flash, and they create Pollux.
Twin streaks.
Exactly.
See, I even know the episode title.
There you go. Exactly. So you know what I'm talking about, and I think some of your listeners will probably know what we're talking about as well. And there, John Wesley Shipp handles it, should we say, similarly to the way the Connor does, because he is once again the stunted child and such. But in that case, obviously, it ends up in the wrong hands, where you have the bad scientist who's like, you must do this, and this, and the Flash is bad, etc., etc. It's a brilliant episode, by the way, people. If you haven't checked it out, check it out, because it's an awesome, awesome episode. And so I think it also depends on who has, in whose clutches a character of this power ends up in. Luckily, as I said, Connor ends up with a good person, as we said, her heart's in the right place. She could have just been a cold sign, say, okay, let's try out and see what he can really do, rather than sit down and have a chat with him. And I thought that was great.
That is fantastic, and I'm going to give you bonus points just for making that reference, because it is such a great relevant reference to this episode. It was a great comparison, by the way. So So bonus points for Nick. I'm gonna give you 1 of points there. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Those imaginary points that mean absolutely nothing.
Well, thank you. I've always looked for an excuse to bring up the Flash 90s show because I love that show to bits.
Well, I could just talk about that show all day long. So that's great. That's fantastic. Before we get into our second topic, let's talk about crypto for a moment. I was geeking really hard about crypto in this episode. I don't know. How about you?
Okay, well, I mean, I love dogs. Actually, when I was growing up, I actually used to dog sit. Mm-hmm. So I actually used to have little puppies running around the house causing mayhem, and that was a lot of fun. It was not so much fun cleaning up, but that's another story. But as a Superman fan, I always have a special place in my heart for crypto. I actually do own a Superman T-shirt featuring crypto. It's just crypto on it, and so I love that T-shirt to bits. And it's wonderful to see him actually use his Kryptonian powers.
Right.
Actually,
how cool was it to see him using heat vision?
Exactly. You were geeking out in that moment, and so was I. I was kind of like.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. That was awesome.
And when he grabbed that missile there, or that rocket propelled grenade in midair, hurled it back out at the guy, killed the guy, but but still, it wasn't just like oh, he's gonna fetch it. No, he actually grabbed it with his teeth and then hurled it right back out at the guy who launched it at him. That was great.
The CGI, because I couldn't tell when it was a real dog and when it wasn't.
Yeah.
But also, whoever trained that dog did an incredible job, and that dog is a very intelligent dog.
That was a great dog actor.
Exactly.
I mean, just the way he seemed so well trained, and he's responding right to Joshua Orpin, and behaving exactly like you would want a dog to be portrayed on TV. It was credit to his trainer on that. I don't know who his trainer was, but fantastic dog actor. So
exactly. Move aside, Rintintin and Lassie. We've got a new hero here.
Now we didn't get to see him fly, but fingers crossed. And hopefully at some point he'll get a little cape.
Because I was going to say, are you waiting to see the cape?
I want to see the cape. So maybe at some point, maybe Eve or somebody will give him a cape. I don't know. We'll find out. Fingers crossed, though. But it was very cool to see crypto and a lot of fun. So, all right. Topic number 2. Let's get into that really quickly. Let's talk more about Mercy here. Mercy Graves. And let's talk about her boss, Walter. What's his last name? Walter Hahn, played by Raul Benea. And Lionel Luthor. And the far much more different take on Lionel Luthor than we saw by John Glover on Smallville. So, what did you think of seeing Mercy Graves and Lionel Luthor in this episode as well?
I have to say, I prefer this Mercy Graves to the Mercy Graves we saw on Supergirl. Mm-hmm. She was good, but I much prefer this incarnation because there they just had to make her an outright villain, and it was just very, very strange. I thought it was if somebody was to ask me who's one of your least favorite villains on Supergirl, I would have to say the Graves. Between her and her brother, they used to get on my nerves.
Yes, they were much more comic relief there, but here Mercy is played far more straight.
Oh yes, and that's why I suppose. Also, as a comic book fan, I appreciated that she was more kind of a bodyguard, because that's at the end of the day what she is, and she's supposed to be kind of Lex's head of security, so she knows what she's doing, and is a little bit like her boss in the sense that, she's given an objective and she will do everything in her power to accomplish it. And she will always make sure that she keeps her boss happy because we know what happens when Lex Luthor is not a happy boss.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There is that.
That's somebody you want to give a present to on Boss's Day. Just saying.
Exactly. Make sure you have every single date down from birthdays to anniversaries to everything.
Pretty much.
But you
notice that she was like, when she was talking to him on the phone, she told him that his father was okay at the house, and then she's like, well, I'll get an estimate for the damages. So she's already looking out for his property value, I guess. So I thought
I
that was
mean,
pretty funny.
she's the bodyguard you'd want to have. I think
Yeah, just the the
what she does,
the girl
and so
Friday. Yeah.
exactly. And all in all, I thought it was just, I thought she was very well played. And I definitely want to see more of her and definitely see what skills she has. Because they assembled the team to go and pick up Connor, I thought she was going to be part of the team. I thought she was going to suit up like everybody else and head on off to do it. But it seems like she almost prefers to be like the woman in the chair.
Right.
Kind of like sitting back and saying, okay, let's let the others do the groundwork. I'm spearheading everything, but everybody else is going to do the heavy lifting, which was an interesting take. And as I said, I definitely hope we get to see more of her and what she gets up to throughout the course of this second season.
Yeah, I think it was more that wasn't really in complete control of how the mission was going to be carried off because Eve was involved.
Mm.
Because you notice that once everything goes, sideways, and Mercy says, "Okay, that's it. We're going to do things my way," and she loads up her handgun with kryptonite bullets. So I think she would have done that from the get-go. But she was told, like, look, especially when Eve made that when Eve was addressing Mercy and the team, that she said, like Mercy asked, "Oh, like, well, can we kill him?" And Eve is adamant about that. She's like, "No, we're not killing him. We just spent like 6 years and $40 million. We're not killing him." So I think Mercy was a little disheartened by that. And so once Eve wasn't a factor anymore and was completely out of the picture, she stepped up and was like, "Okay, we're going to do things the way I've been wanting to do them from day one." So
Yeah,
and take a much more aggressive stance.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder whether there's a little bit of bloodlust in that woman, or whether it's just efficiency for efficiency's sake, as being, we have to get rid of the problem, and if it means even killing this guy, oh well, we had to do it because that's the prime objective is to put this person down, kind of dead or alive situation. So I think it's interesting, yeah, because at some point, like you said, when she ends up shooting Con, and then she has, of course, Crypto with the kryptonite collar.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, it's time to take things seriously. So it makes you wonder what extremes she'll go to follow Lex's agenda.
Right. Yeah, and you feel bad, right? Obviously you feel bad for Crypto. I want to know, like, what happens to Crypto? She's got to put a kryptonite leash on him. That's not good. So we need to, like, save Crypto, everybody. # save Crypto.
Crypto, yes.
But so that I was very concerned about Crypto at that moment, especially being in Mercy's clutches. Did not like that at all, especially this version of Mercy, who seems just so ruthless, just like Lex. And that's probably why she's still alive working for Lex, unlike probably 99% of Lex's employees. But yeah, credit to Natalie Gumede for just a really powerful performance. And I'm guessing we obviously haven't seen the last of her either.
Oh no, exactly. You know what? I'd hate to be the head.
Because we got to save Crypto. Can't see the last of her.
Exactly, and you said the fact of her being still alive.
Yes.
I'd hate to be the head of Luthor Corp's HR department. That would be so much paperwork. I can only imagine.
Well, it would probably be very simple. Okay, anybody who files a complaint, we kill them. Problem solved.
Exactly. Alert the family, send a full sign, kind of thing.
Yep. It's like, okay, send out the assassination team. Problem solved. Lionel. Now Lionel. We need to talk about Lionel because Connor, as he's kind of trying to grasp these memories fleeting in his head, He looks at the side of a truck while he's in Metropolis and sees a Kansas wheat field. And that kind of triggers him. They know that they have to try to escape Cadmus Labs because they're on the manhunt for him and Crypto. So they decide, okay, we're going to go to Smallville. And so they travel to Smallville by bus and using the money that he stole from that poor woman in an alleyway.
Can I take your money?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I have your money if, are you, and so like, I really want this shirt, this T-shirt. But so they go to Smallville and Connor, and it was shot really well by Alex Kalimnios, where he gets these memories of a house and they start to going up to the house. We don't know whose house it is. We presume it's the Kents, right?
Yeah.
But Crypto is at the edge of the driveway barking. He's like agitated. He senses something's not right. And then we see that shot of the mailbox and it says Luthor on it. And we're like, oh, it's the Luthor house. That's why. And so he goes inside. He sees, well, first he sees Lionel on the front porch. And Lionel is apparently very old and he's very blind, but he's very happy to have the company. And so he invites Connor in. They end up having dinner. And then Lionel asks Connor to for a drink because to get this bottle of brandy, and Connor starts having flashbacks of this memory where Lionel as a kid used to beat Lex because he knocked over his liquor bottle.
Yeah.
And some of them are just so overpowering. Connor was at one point raising his hand, ready to strike Lionel, but because Lionel's blind, he couldn't see it. What did you think of that moment?
Well, first off, as you were saying, the trip to Smallville was brilliantly shot. I will definitely agree with you. And I think it might have been a homage to Ridley Scott's The Gladiator.
Yeah.
When you see the cornfield. I wonder whether it was a homage. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that movie, so maybe it's because of me loving that movie and seeing the hand caressing the grains of corn. And
yes,
I was like,
yeah, just going right over that. Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting is that how the roles are turned when he's about to strike him and says it was an accident, because that's what Connor remembers his reaction being, or Lex's reaction being, when his father was about to hit him. So, excuse me, I thought that was very interesting. And also, it's the first time we see a humble origin for Lionel Luthor, because we often think of the Luthors as being one of the wealthiest families out there, and coming from, Lex's dad being a tycoon himself. Here we see him as almost being a farmer, as it were, and his son was a self-made man, left Smallville and made something of himself. And I thought it was interesting they went the route of the humble beginnings compared to the tycoon we get in Smallville, and the idea that we think that the Luthors have been a powerful family for centuries. So I really liked that as well.
Yeah, that was I agree. It was a much more down to earth, grounded take on Lionel. I totally agree with you there. Lionel does make this comment, though. He says, well, Lex is a scientist like me, but obviously Lex being this super genius far exceeded Lionel.
Yeah.
And Lionel, I think, is bitter as a result over it, because he keeps making these cracks going, look, Lex was in such a rush to get out of here. He never wanted to stay, and I tried to teach him, and they start to reveal that essentially this abuse had gone on for quite a long time, and because what Lionel quote unquote trying to teach him, and which was actually just him abusing him, because I think he was probably jealous of Lex's intellect. Because that Lex was far more successful than he was, and then when he left Smallville for Metropolis, he became even more of a success. But he still felt enough proud of him enough that he kept these mementos, these trophies, in a small little display case.
It's
a very 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 kind of nuanced take on Lionel, but also I think it was a much more bitter, resentful take.
Exactly, and it's it's an odd. Once again, you're talking about the fact of the battle, the psychological battle that Connor faces.
Right.
I think Lionel Luthor has the same thing, as in he wants to be proud of his son. He wants to be, and that side of him makes him keep the pictures and the photos, because I'm sure there is still some love for him. But at the same time, it could also be the fact that, like you said, his dreams were unfulfilled.
Right.
So rather maybe living vicariously through his son, like a lot of parents do.
Yes.
It gets to the point to where it's like, this is where I wanted to be, and you got there when I didn't. Or to maybe, because we don't know how much of the reasons for Lionel abusing Lex. Maybe he came back with an amazing report card, and Lionel, instead of being happy about it, beat the heck out of his son,
right?
Because I wasn't good at school or anything of this nature. But
or he was just drunk and angry.
Exactly. Because we know there is an underlying alcohol problem there as well.
Right.
And it's interesting that they address alcoholism in two situations here, because to a certain extent, I don't know whether Eve is an alcoholic or not, but it gives that impression, as in when she's drinking, she says, "I'm having lunch." That kind of sounds the kind of thing that somebody who is dependent on alcohol would say. And on the other hand,
but I get the impression that Eve drinks because she feels guilty over not standing up to Lex, over Connor's creation.
Yeah, it's almost like to numb the pain, as it were.
Yeah,
it's her painkiller.
Yeah, exactly. It's to numb her guilt. And with Lionel, it's more just that he drinks because he's bitter and resentful.
Exactly. So it's interesting how they show also the different facades of what alcohol abuse can be, and why people abuse alcohol. And I think that it's interesting, though, the whole psychological thing I think was incredible. And because at first you feel for Lionel at first, and then suddenly he changes when Connor addresses him with the fact of, "You used to beat your kid."
Yes.
And he's like, "Who told you that?" and stuff. And suddenly there's this change in his face, and you see this horribly dark, evil man.
Mm-hmm.
And that is played so well, because it's almost like it reminds me of some of those serial killer movies I've seen, where at first they seem amicable, nice, sweet, etc. Takes one thing, that light goes on, and suddenly you see this cold-blooded, evil person. And that's
it's like someone flipped a light switch, and then all of a sudden their true nature is exposed.
Exactly. He almost turns psychotic to a certain point, and you're like, wow, okay, I don't like this guy.
Right. And you totally understand why Lex turned out the way he did.
Exactly. It's a lot of a person's psyche does come from the parenting. It is a thing of environment also, but also what they learn at home, and it carries on the theme of how we become people from a young age, because we're seeing Connor, as it were, as a man-child, as a kid, and what he can become with given the right people to teach him. Because look what happened to Lex, having certain people tutor him and giving a negative example. So it could also...
Nope, you kind of cut out there.
The way you are raised also reflects... Pardon me?
No, just you kind of cut out there for a moment.
Sorry.
It's
no,
Skype. Yeah.
It's so I think there is that fact of trying to show us is how a person's moral makeup develops according to how they were raised, and they give us these two examples with Connor and Lex. It's like you're given a chance to be a good person, but you have the right kind of role models. So I think there's also that too.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Okay, let's move on to our third topic, because we're running a bit long. So I want to get this in. This is what I'm essentially referring to as world's finest. So I want to talk about Superboy meeting Robin, and when after everything's said and done, after encountering with Eve showing Connor the truth about Lex Luthor, Connor goes wandering in the streets, and after Eve's advice to lay low, don't be a hero, don't get involved, don't try to help anybody, because then Cadmus is going to be able to track you that much faster. So Connor and Krypto are out wandering the streets at night, and just so happens they come across the plaza where, coincidentally enough, it's the same building that of the previous episode's cliffhanger, where Deathstroke had placed Robin / Jason Todd on a window washer's platform with a ticking bomb and sending it plummeting, and sending Jason plummeting. And we actually finally get the resolution to that cliffhanger at the very end of this episode. So what did you think of that big moment?
Well, I thought it was brilliant, and it also answered the question, shall we say, to all those who used to read Death in the Family, of
Yes.
What would have happened if Robin had lived.
Right.
So I thought it was a nice wink to that as well, because I think a lot of us were expecting, like people like you and I, Charles, who know that story back to front, that he probably would have plummeted to his death like his comic counterpart. Yeah. But they decided to go the route of, okay, he's going to be saved.
Well, there wasn't a crowbar involved, and the Joker wasn't there, so we kind of figured maybe Jason would be okay.
True, there is also that as well, but I was happy that they introduced him like this, and also the fact that, like early Superman, Superboy leaps instead of flying. Yeah. So I thought that was cool as well, and of course Jason's reaction is like, well, at first I'm like, I was kind of looking at the screen going, dude, 2 words, thank you. You can't say them. He took his time to say it.
But he actually did, and that was a big thing for Jason.
Exactly, being such a bratty kid as he is.
A punk.
Exactly.
Yes.
And for once actually hearing him say thank you, it's like, wow, the kid is learning.
I was like, are you sure you're Jason Todd? Did something happen to you on the way down? Did you suffer brain damage of some kind? You don't seem right. You were actually polite there for a minute. What's up with that?
It was a nice introduction, and I actually have a question for you. Do you think
that
the fact that he got shot and this situation happened then, that it was a plot device to get him into the tower?
Oh, definitely. I think it was. Now, obviously, they had taken Krypto. Mercy did, but by plugging, and if you notice, Connor was shot in the upper left chest, which away from any vital organs. So they just have to get those kryptonite bullets out of him, presumably, because I'm guessing they're still in there. And they'll probably take him back to the tower to do that. And that's where he'll probably get to meet the team and so on. And we'll see how that plays out. But that would be my guess as well, yes.
And it'll be interesting to see then how and what he learns from the various other Titans. Like, for example, he might gravitate towards Starfire because they're both aliens, for example, or he has alien heritage.
Right.
Or he might handle his anger management with Hawk, for example, because the guy has some serious issues like, dude, don't get mad like I do, or something like that. So I'm sure there'll be some interesting relationships with that. And I guess Dick will probably end up being his tutor, and he'll probably be his Superman in this case.
Well, they seem to be developing, the original Titans and the new Titans, the younger members. So I'm sure he'll hang out a lot with Jason, Gar, Rachel, and probably Rose as well. Yeah. So we'll see how that works. But they're definitely building their cast. And it's coming out very nicely. And then, obviously, once they find out, his powers, I'm sure that's going to be really interesting. But it was kind of great to have that Superboy Robin moment where they meet and and then Superboy saves Robin, and resolves that cliffhanger, which
Oh,
I thought
yes.
which I thought was interesting because if anybody had been following on DCUniverse.com, you notice that DC Universe actually had the cojones to actually do a little poll online: should Jason Todd live or die? Just like they did way back in the '80s when they killed off Jason Todd the first time, only with a 1-900 phone number. So points, I guess, to DC Universe for kind of bringing that back, sort of, but it's a little dark. Took a little stones to make that happen. I thought personally.
I thought it was a nice homage. I think also to readers of classic DC,
Right.
and I think everybody got a grin out of that one. And now moving forward, we of course are getting more and more characters. Shall we say, new characters added? Because what happened to Aqualad?
Yes.
I have a question for you, Charles, because you are, I know you're a huge Flash fan like myself. Are you lying in wait and hoping for a Kid Flash, or you don't think we'll get one?
At the moment, as long as the Flash TV show is on air, I don't think we're going to get one. The same way we're not going to get Speedy as long as Arrow's on the air. Now Arrow's going off, so maybe once Arrow goes off, and we did get a Roy Harper mention this season when Donna was corresponding with Roy Harper via texts. So he does exist in this Titans continuity, at least. So maybe we'll get to see Speedy. I don't know if we're going to see Kid Flash, though. I hope we do, but I'm not going to hold my breath, personally.
No, I'm lighting a few candles at the altar of the Flash in hopes that we'll get to Speedster.
And I still want to see my, redheaded Wally West.
Exactly. We want West.
Like, nothing against, Keenan Lonsdale on as Kid Flash on the Flash TV show, but I still want to see my redheaded Wally West from the Titans. So what better place to do that than on Titans, in my opinion? So
exactly.
So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Since we'll never get a blonde Flash, we might as well get a redheaded Kid Flash.
yeah, exactly. Which one do you think we'll get first? An actual blonde Barry Allen, or a redheaded Wally West?
That could be an interesting poll, I think. I think we get some interesting results on that one.
Start your bookmaking, Las Vegas, because we'll see how that turns out. Anything else about this episode before we move on?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything that had to be covered, and it definitely leaves me wanting more. I can't wait for next week's episode.
Yep.
And so far, a very, very strong season so far, and I think they definitely won't disappoint.
Okay, so did you happen to have any favorite lines of this episode that you liked?
To be honest, I think almost the entire episode is quotable. But
Any lines that stood out?
Well, I think the main one for me was that moment where Connor does look at her and say, "Can I call you mom?" And she's like, "No, no, no." I thought that was probably one of my favorite ones.
That was good. That was a good one. I liked Mercy's line about looks like someone got up on the wrong side of the glass tube. I thought that was pretty funny. And Eve addressing Mercy and her team, where she says, "You will be hunting the world's most dangerous infant, and I think it's safe to say that he has not had his nap."
That was a good
and
one
everybody
too.
laughs at that, and then Mercy kind of gives the look of the staring of death at her team, going, "Well, that's all kinds of funny, but I'm, already interviewing your replacements because some of you aren't coming back on this mission." So
That was cold.
way to bring the morale right down.
Exactly. It's like, maybe I want out of this now.
yeah, that was good. I like Eve's line that consequences are the shitty things that happen when you make stupid decisions without thinking. When she was explaining consequences to Connor. And later when Eve says, "See, you're not a monster, you're a person." And Connor asks, "What does that mean?" And Eve replies, "That means your life is going to be difficult and complicated and painful and sometimes full of joy. Just remember that people are not what they say they're going to do. They are what they do.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. So, thought that was really good. Now, as far as a rating for this episode, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, so I'm just going to say that I give this one 9 out of 10 black and red Superman t-shirts. I really like this one a lot. How about you? Did you really like this one?
I think we're on the same page here. I'm going to give it 9 out of 10 kryptonite collars.
Nice, very nice. So we're totally in sync on that one. That's
yes,
cool.
indeed.
All right. Now I don't have any Titans Tower news, but we did get some feedback that I want to run down really quickly. Stephen Marshall emailed us on our email account and said, "Hi guys," and this is regarding Connor, the episode Connor. "Hi guys, well I called it. I said that Superboy would end up saving Jason either at the end of this episode or in the next. As for the whole episode, Connor was hands down my favorite episode of Titans yet. It was everything I wanted in Superboy's origin. It was very reminiscent of Superboy, the Boy of Steel by Jeff Johns and also by Francis Manapul. I'll just throw that in there, the artist, which is one of my all-time favorite graphic novels. Yeah, I really like that one too. I actually have Jeff Johns' autograph on my copy. So I'm just being smug there. I have a theory.
It goes green with envy.
Yep. I have a theory next week that they'll be getting Bruce Wayne to take the kryptonite bullets out. So he thinks they're going to go to the Batcave, and that means we'll get to see Bruce in the Batcave. How cool would that be? That's a possibility, but I think they're going to go to Titan's Tower. Personally, we'll see. We'll find out. So he goes, bring on next week. Anyway, a random thought. What do you think happened to Lionel Luthor? So presumably after the events at his house. So any theories, Nick, about what you think happened to Lionel after his house was completely destroyed, practically?
Well, I'm thinking that, if Mercy was in charge, knowing it's her boss's dad, you have a feeling he's probably going to be taken care of, regardless of, I don't know what their relationship is at this point. They're probably estranged at this point, but still, he is her boss's dad. So I'm feeling either he was moved to another location or they went out and bought him a brand new property somewhere, in a whole new farm and stuff. It's like, no worries. We've just enslaved X number of people to build you a house right now so you can move in tomorrow.
Yeah. We just kick this family out so you can live here until your place is rebuilt. Something like that.
That's what I have a feeling is what happened, unless Lex had a chat with his dad, like, what did you see, what do you know, etc., etc., which is probably what Lex would do.
Yeah, he probably has him tied up in some basement somewhere that's a completely dark room except for a big spotlight on his face, and is probably torturing him for information.
I wouldn't put it past Lex.
I wouldn't either. So, but at the very least, the last we heard was that Mercy told Lex that his father was fine. So we'll see. But maybe fine means he's in custody and now we can interrogate him. So we'll find out. But thank you very much, Stephen. We really appreciate you writing in. And then while we're at it, Ann Deacon wrote to us on Twitter, and she also has some comments really quickly about the episode. She says about Connor, she says, pleasantly surprised how much I enjoyed virtually free Titans DCU episode. Eve's comments about Connor really helped establish what his character would be like, and I found both of them compelling. They're setting up all these new Titans beautifully. So that's Ann on Twitter. So Ann Deacon, thank you very much at Scaper Anya on Twitter. So I want to give you a quick shout out. Thank you so much for writing in. And if you want to be like Steven, and you want to be like Ann, to be one of the cool people, write to us. Drop us a line, however you can. You can reach us at TitanTalkcast@gmail.com. That's TitanTalkcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach us on Twitter at TitanTalkcast. We definitely appreciate that. Or on Facebook at Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast. Please like and follow us there. We'd definitely appreciate it. Tell your friends about us if you are so inclined. And you can also go on Apple Podcasts, rate and review us. We definitely appreciate that. Otherwise, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog, Geeky Things. Wait for it.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Titan Talk, including all kinds of Titans news as it comes out, news of my other podcasts I do for Southgate Media, including Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast that Nik is on from time to time. So if you've enjoyed him here, please check him out on Next Stop Everywhere. I'm sure he'd appreciate that as well. And then also the Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks and David Lynch, if you're a film buff. Nik, how about you? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
Well, if any of your listeners are interested in finding out more about what we do, as you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I do host the Whiskey and Cigarettes Show, which is a country music radio show where we play country from yesterday, today, and everything else in between. That airs every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. To find out more about that, you can go to whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. And I've also recently started a podcast called Happiness in Darkness, where we discuss superhero movies. We have a different co-host every week to discuss a movie of their choice. If you'd like to find out more about that, or heck, if you even want to be on the show, you can send us an email at happinessindarknesshow@gmail.com. And to listen to previous episodes, you can go to our SoundCloud page, which is soundcloud.com/whiskey and cigarettes.
Please do that, everybody. Both Whiskey and Cigarettes and Happiness in Darkness. Get yours truly's personal recommendation. I had a ball talking on Happiness in Darkness, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think Nik has a great format talking comic book movies, where he brings someone on to talk really passionately about the movie that they're really into talking about. And I'm going to be talking The Dark Knight on Happiness in Darkness sometime next month. I can't remember the exact date, but I have it written down, I promise. And we're going to talk about that. So please check out Whiskey and Cigarette Show, especially if you're a country music buff, and just check it out anyway. And also check out Happiness in Darkness. Highly recommended by yours truly.
Thank you very much for that.
No problem. Anytime. You're so kind to us. For everybody, little inside baseball here. Nik was kind enough to help us out at the last minute with Jesse going on vacation. So I want to give my special Charles thanks to Nik for helping us out. He's one of our favorites. He's one of our closest friends right now. So it's always great to talk to him. We always have a lot of fun. And he's always welcome here. So, Nik, anytime you want to come back to Titans Tower, talk some Titans or Doom Patrol or whatever, you have an open invitation, sir.
Well, I greatly appreciate that, being called up to the big leagues from the farm team. I really appreciate it, and I hope that this, should we say, call up was good and that your listeners enjoyed it as much as I did.
See, I would think you would say I was in the pros and now I'm being dropped down to the minor leagues. But...
Oh, not at all. This is Class A podcasting, people. So definitely show all your support for Charles and Jesse because they do an incredible job.
Well, you're very kind to say that, sir, and your check is in the mail. So
thank you. I was wondering.
Yeah, all right. I'll make sure that happens. It'll clear. Trust me, it'll clear. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And next time on Titan Talk, we're going to talk Bruce Wayne. Titans episode 7, so we're obviously going to get the return of Ian Glenn as Bruce Wayne. What did you think of his performance so far? Really quickly.
You know what? I thought it was a very interesting take of having an older Bruce Wayne, because being also a fan of the Miller comics, I thought it was a nice nod to that as well. And I really look forward to seeing where all this will go. And I guess it also gave them a little bit of excuse to why we don't have Batman. It was a very elegant way of putting out that we don't have Batman for this reason. I loved it. And Ian does an incredible job. So I look forward to seeing more of him for sure.
I don't know about you, but I want to see him in an actual live version adaptation of The Dark Knight Returns.
I was thinking along those lines. I'm like, people or whoever, the powers
You need to make
that
this happen. Yeah, Warner
exactly,
Brothers.
you know,
This should be a
exactly, Warner
no-brainer.
Brothers. Exactly. Look at this guy. He's got great screen presence. Think about it,
Yep.
So
He's
meditate
tall.
on it.
He has the jawline for Batman. So they'd be fools not to like cast him as an older Batman for Dark Knight Returns.
I think it's a dream for many of us, and I definitely hope that the right ears are listening to this, and that they will, follow up on it, because it could really, it would be a missed opportunity if they didn't do it.
And if you really wanted to do it perfectly, you could like dub his voice with Kevin Conroy's voice. And
wow!
How amazing would that be?
My mind was just blown right now. As I said, it's like exactly that was a mic drop moment there, Charles. Seriously.
There you go. So Ian Glenn doing the physical performance, and then Kevin Conroy doing the vocal performance. Dark Knight Returns. Warner Brothers, I just developed your movie for you. Make it happen. So
exactly.
All right. So everybody, come on back. Thank you again for listening, and come on back for Bruce Wayne. We'll see you next time right here on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Goodbye, everybody.